As they say, you are remembered for what you do in November. And that's what's at stake as the calendar turns into November for the Robert Morris football team. I'm Nathan Bryson, alongside me today, Ethan Morrison, and this is the Bobby Moe Football Show. Ethan, how are you doing today?
Doing just swell, Nate. Army was red hot at home, looking to keep that alive this week. Big game for them this week. They're sitting in third place in the conference right now. So, looking to, prove some people wrong this week against a very talented, almost said Charleston Southern. They already played them. Kennesaw State team.
Yeah, Colonials 3-4, 2-2 in conference. Not many people would have thought coming into the month of November that the Colonials would be sitting in this spot in the stadiums in the Big South, at the start of the season. No one would have saw this coming. 2-2 right now currently, like you mentioned, really strong at home. But one thing that has stood out over the years, speaking, the calendar's turned into November, this is where teams, make their run into the postseason. Colonials 3-7 since 2017 in the month of November. They've struggled the one year that they actually performed well in the NEC with Bernard Clark going 7-5. They had a few wins, but this is the time of the year that you need to get it done. They've shown what they could do at home. And speaking of home, let's go into the last game against Hampton Pirates. They were able to take down the Pirates visiting the Joe. Ethan, you were on the sideline. Tell me, what went down in that ball game for the Colonials to come out on top.
Yeah, when you looked at that team last week, you saw it was a tale of two halves, basically. In that first half, Robert Morris, they got off to a quick start. You had that DeAndre Hicks pass. That was, showed Bernard Clark's, trickery. And that worked out really well. They jumped on the Pirates quickly. But, over the course of that half, they kind of struggled down the stretch, especially defensively. And then after really that first drive, they weren't able to get much going on in the air or on the ground. But, in that second half, though, it kind of, like we saw in those other home games, it just clicked. Just clicked. And you saw them. You got Elijah Jackson involved in the run game. He scored, I think, one touchdown in the third quarter that, brought the Colonials within one possession. And then you had some other lesser-known guys, being able to, get their stamp on this game and, really turn the tides for the Colonials. And then once again, I feel like we say this every time the Colonials are at home. They get that one big stop on the defensive side of the ball, which set up, and then they force that turnover on that fumble late in the fourth quarter, which set up that Nick Biseglia game-winning field goal with 11 seconds remaining. But, just a tale of two halves. And, going up against now, we'll get into this a little bit later with Kennesaw State. They're going to have to do the same thing that they've been doing at home all year. Try to get off to a fast start against a very talented Owls team, but, also, be able to, hold down the fort on the defensive front.
Yeah, the 3 wins thus far this season have come at the Joe. 7 straight wins dating back to 2019. Their last loss came on September 14th against Dayton. That was the homecoming game for the Colonials, and that was their last loss on home turf. They've played exceptionally well. Not exceptionally well, but they've had a lot of gutsy performances, especially this year. Close games, but able to come out on top against Howard and Charleston Southern. And, the 2 wins now with Hampton along with it, the 2 wins in conference, their only wins so far in Big South play since they joined, a year ago and had that spring season where they did not play well. They played Kennesaw State, as we mentioned, coming up, big game for them, but getting rocked by them last year. But you mentioned, some of the guys that have stepped up. I want to talk about Anthony Purge. In the running game, you had 3 different guys that stepped in. Elijah Jackson had a nice day on the ground. But Anthony Purge, back-to-back games with a touchdown. He only rushed for 15 yards, but he did have a big score there to help the Colonials. And Elijah Jackson, again, like you mentioned, 127 yards on the ground, and another 100-plus yard game for Elijah Jackson, the redshirt senior. He has been, the go-to guy in the run game. And when they have been able to find the balance between the passing game, because we know they have weapons, George Martin, when he finds guys like DeAndre Hicks and James Westry, DeMonte Martin as well, you can throw in there Chris Charles, Jalen Brown, the freshman. But then when you can run the ball, they're so effective. And that's what happened. They haven't been able to find that when they go on the road. Those games that they're losing, some of them I don't even think they should have lost. North Alabama, North Carolina, A&T, I think those are some wins that got away from them that they could easily won. Gardner-Webb's a tougher opponent, but when you find that balance, they have played very well, and they have won games.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean, and also that nice balance. I mean, you hear about being able to be balanced on both, run and passing on that offensive side of the ball. You didn't really see that again in those losses on the road against North Alabama, against North Carolina A&T, Gardner-Webb. Those games, they didn't have much balance. But when they were able to, have that balance, George Martin threw for over 300 yards in that game. Also, they had Elijah Jackson running for over 120 yards. So when you look at that, that's your keys for success. Because Elijah Jackson, he's not going to he's not going to be able to do it all on the ground. He's a smaller guy, doesn't have much size, and cannot bull through guys and rush through that defensive front of any defensive line. But when you're able to mix it up with a pass and get the defense on their toes, you're going to have those holes open for Elijah Jackson. And the Colonials, they exploited that on the Hampton Pirates defense last week. Elijah Jackson was able to run the ball very effectively in that second half because, like I said, that balance that George Martin was able to do. I mean, George was able to throw the ball with ease on Saturday. Probably the best I've seen him throw all year this year. I mean, sure, he did have some struggles down the stretch in that game, but still, he still was very effective in the air.
Yeah, and when, looking at this game, the Colonials were trailing 28-13 with 12:59 in the third to go in the third quarter. I mean, they were down by 15 points. And, sometimes you need that explosive offensive attack, and through the air especially, to help you get back into a game. But sometimes I just think keep it simple, and I think you can claw your way back. Because when you get the run going and the pass going, being able to run the ball keeps the defense honest, and then it opens up through the air. I think there's some teams, looking at the FBS, watching some teams that are strong through the air, they don't use the running game enough, and then when they're trying to come back, they just don't have enough in the tank. But when you have that nice balance, I think it actually helps you in the end if you're still trying to come back in the game. Because when you're able to run the ball for a chunk of 5 yards, 10 yards, or whatever the case may be, it helps you in the long haul. And I think that's what helps sets you up. Big defensive stop there after they score on a passing play to Elijah Jackson actually to help them score. And then they go for the 2-point conversion where Mason Miller, catches the 2-point conversion wide open. A simple in route in route over the middle. He's wide open for George Martin to find him in the end zone. No one on that side of the field for the 2-point conversion to tie it at 35. And then, as you mentioned, big defensive stop. A sack was thrown in there on that drive against Hampton, against a quarterback who was just lighting up the Colonials, Jet Duffy. 287 yards through the air. No scores through the air, but 5 rushing touchdowns. The Colonials just could not stop him on defense throughout the most part of the game. And it comes to the end. If you're going to win a game and it's close, you got to make a defensive stop, and that's what they did.
Yeah, talk about Duffy. Holy crap. Just being able to utilize those legs. It wasn't all of this option play, option type, rushes. It was all, he's looking to pass, and no, he's gone. He's scrambling for a first down, or being able to do that with his legs, and that's what hurt the Colonials in this game. It was Duffy being able to get out of the pocket, get the pocket to the pocket was he was able to get out of the pocket and find ways to move the ball downfield that way. Didn't really have a nice contain on him, which let him to rush all over the Colonials. But Nate, like you said, that that big defensive stop which they got was huge for them, and not being, he still threw for 287 yards, which is still fairly decent, but being able to contain him in the end, and be able to get that big defensive stop was huge. And going back to having that balance, you're going to be a lot more versatile on what you can call, and it's going to be a lot more easier than if you're run heavy in the game, and then they're gonna run it on this play. So just being able to have that versatility is just huge for them, and something that they're gonna look to replicate against Kennesaw State.
Yeah, and I think at the end, the Colonials knew that they had to key in on the run and on Duffy potentially running the ball. He had 96 yards on the ground. He had those 5 touchdowns. He only has 6 total rushing touchdowns on the season. So basically, all of his touchdowns came against the Colonials on the ground. He exposed them. He was weaving through defenders, making tacklers miss. But then it came down to that huge last drive. The Colonials able to get the ball back, and an impressive drive to get them into field goal range. On 3rd and 2, the Colonials were stuck there, but a huge pass from George Martin to Elijah Jackson for 19 yards, and he was able to get out of bounds, so he stopped the clock. And then a few plays later, pass from Martin to Dylan Smith for 15 yards, right in the middle of the field down to the Hampton 20-yard line. So that set up the perfect position for Nick Bisceglia, able to kick with 5 seconds left, lifted them 38-35 over Hampton. He has 3 game winners in his career. He's had a pretty solid career in the Colonials uniform, 27 for 44 for field goals. He's been reliable when they needed him. And again, those 3 game winners, huge, and it came down to him as well in this game. And for that effort, named the Big South Special Teams Player of the Week.
Yeah, I mean, he's been Mr. Consistent for the Colonials this year. Hasn't really had many major issues kicking the ball. And like you said, he's there when you need him. He's been very consistent in times where, the Colonials needed those points, like especially at the end of the half. Or, like you said, late in the game, he was able to knock that game winner in and game winner through. So, I mean, congratulations to him winning that Big South Special Teams Player of the Week, the first weekly award won by the Robert Morris football team in the Big South.
Yeah, and before the season, we talked. They weren't getting a lot of respect in the preseason polls, and now they're starting to gain some momentum here. I mean, people are looking, like we said at the top of the show, they're looking down at the standings and they're saying, wait a second, what's Robert Morris doing up here with the likes of Monmouth and Kennesaw State? Obviously, the records aren't the same, but they're right there to take this conference. I mean, as we mentioned, Kennesaw State 4-0 in conference. Monmouth, both of them are 4-0, but you have Robert Morris. They have both those teams left.
Mm-hmm.
2 big wins against those teams, then you have Campbell to finish out the year. Who knows what can happen in this stretch run right now?
Yeah, I mean, Robert Morris controls their own destiny on how they want their season to play out. If they get a win here at home, this is a huge game against Kennesaw State tomorrow. So if they're able to somehow pull it out tomorrow and go into Monmouth next weekend and miraculously pull out another win, they got Campbell in their way. And Campbell's kind of struggled this year, but it's all about what team are we going to see? Are we going to see the team that fought hard in the second half against Hampton, or are we going to see a team that one of the road games that they played? So right now it's all about how are the Colonials going to come out tomorrow, and how are they going to come out next week against the top 2 teams in this conference, and see what performance they put on.
Yeah, Kennesaw State, as we mentioned, 7-1 overall, 4-0. They're number 8 ranked in the FCS. I mean, they've just been tremendous. But a lot of their offense comes through the air. They have been just tremendous through the air so far this season. On the ground. They've really relied on the ground game, not the air. And that's what the Colonials struggle to stop with Jet Duffy this past game. I mean, what do the Colonials need to do in your eyes to stop this run game?
I mean, it might seem pretty. I mean, I don't want to sound like, I know everything what I'm talking about. But stack the line. If they're a run-heavy team, just stack the line and try to stop them on the ground. I think it was the same problem that Robert Morris had last year with, not being able to stop the run in Kennesaw, Georgia last year. But, if they're just able to, stack the box, they're not going to have to worry so much about, defending the pass. It seems like more Kennesaw is just going to try to run it right down your throats. And, stopping the run is a huge key for them tomorrow. They're not going to have to worry as much about the passing game as they would have against Duffy last week against Hampton. They're going to be more worried about stopping that run and not having to worry about, Kennesaw airing it out on them.
Yeah, and looking more at this formidable rushing attack for Kennesaw State, 266.3 yards per game, leads all of the Big South Conference, and that's 4th in the FCS this year. Now, their passing game, 111 yards per game, that's last. So if the Colonials can key in on that run and just basically stack the box, as you mentioned, they can play strong defensively. Now, Kennesaw State, on the defensive side, they're only letting up 16.5 points per game. That's number 1 in the Big South. They've really shut down opponents, especially on the ground and through the air. They've done a tremendous job of keeping their teams contained that they've played. Their only loss coming to an FBS school in Georgia Tech. And even that game, I mean, there was times where you thought that they could take over in that game because that's just the team they are. Mm-hmm. I mean, since 2015, they have been tremendous. I mean, since their program became in existence. I mean, they have been in the pools for 55 straight weeks. Been in the pools for 55 straight weeks. It's just tremendous run that they're on right now. And Colonials are just another person standing in their way. I mean, they're just another person that they feel they could probably kick to the side as they're on their way to a potential Big South Conference championship.
But, it seems like they're not running away with a lot of these games. I mean, last week against Gardner-Webb, they won by 4 points, 34-30. North Carolina A&T only won 14-0. Hampton, they blew out 34-15. So, if the Colonials are gonna be able to do something tomorrow, they're gonna have to keep the game close. And if they're able to keep the game close, they might be able to sneak away with something. And like you said, just stack the box.
Yeah, and the talent on this team comes right from their leader, their sophomore quarterback, Xavier Shepard. He was named Big South Offensive Player of the Week this past week. He had a program record 4 touchdowns this past week against Gardner-Webb, threw 12 for 14 passes, 207 yards. He had 68 rushing yards on the ground, and he threw a 15-yard touchdown pass to his ex-man, Xavier Hill, with 11 seconds left to beat the Bulldogs. I mean, just another game just in their back pocket. They were able to go out there, struggled at times. They went down 10-0 early against Gardner-Webb, but they were able to get right back in it and then just win the thing in the end, and that's what Kennesaw State has consistently done throughout the years.
Yeah, and Shepard, not only, he did play well airing the ball out, but also on the ground he leads the team in rushing with 624 yards on the year, with 12 touchdowns. So and he averages about 78 yards on the ground per game. So he's definitely a versatile quarterback. It's something that the Colonials will have to key in on this weekend.
Yeah, those 12 touchdowns, 4th in the FCS this year. And I want to go also to another one of their running backs. Gabriel Benyard is a freshman, won Freshman Offensive Player of the Week, or Freshman of the Week honors for the Owls and Gabriel Benyard. He had 188 all-purpose yards, 5 rushes for 32 yards, 3 receptions for 61 yards. But where he was the biggest factor came in the return game, 95 yards on kick returns. And he had a huge 73-yarder that set up for a Kennesaw State touchdown, helped them get into good position. So they have different playmakers on this team. Wide receiver Caleb O'Neal, also 162 receiving yards, has 2 touchdowns. He's their leader in that category. But again, their defense has been solid. So just an all-around exceptional team coming to Moon Township to take on the Colonials this week.
Mm-hmm. It should be a very, very, very good game. A lot closer than a lot of people would think.
Yeah, and continuing just with their impressive run game. They've rushed for 150-plus yards in 67 straight games. They just rely on the run game. Mm-hmm. And again, if you're Bernard Clark watching film, you're just telling your guys, get in there, win the trenches, push back their offensive line and get in there and get those guys on the ground quickly.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean, I think we're saying it ad nauseum now. Just be able to stop that run. Don't think heavy on that. Don't think too heavily on that pass game. Still think about it, but think about that run game. Think about what they've been able to do this year, where they've had a lot of success in. And, key in on that. And, be able to stop the run.
Yeah, and when the Colonials entered the Big South, when they made the move over to the conference, you looked at 2 teams that basically ran the conference, ran the show, Monmouth and Kennesaw State. And head coach Brian Bohannon, who's coming in, to take on the Colonials, moved into second place all-time in wins in the Big South with 59. He only needs 4 more to tie the record and 5 to take over for the most wins in Big South Conference history. So this guy has just been tremendous running this team and getting this team basically the cream of the crop in this conference, getting them at the top of the FCS each year.
I mean, yeah, he has the winning formula not only for this conference, but also in the whole FCS as a whole. They've just been able to like you said, very consistent, especially in those FCS polls. So and Nate, you said this program hasn't really been around for this long, right?
No, 2015.
So I mean, to see that is just so remarkable. To see a team that's only been around for what is it now, 6 years, and to have the success that they had is just incredible.
Yeah, and last year, the Colonials had to take on Kennesaw State in that spring season, shortened season. Colonials dealt with COVID, and they dealt with a huge loss against the Owls. 35-0 they lost when they traveled to Georgia. The only bright spot in that game, Elijah Jackson rushed for 94 yards in that game. And if you're going to win this ball game, you got to look for Elijah Jackson, Jonathan Wynn to start running the ball effectively, basically match their tempo and their speed in the run game. And last year, the Owls scored 21 points in the first quarter. If you're the Colonials this time around, you can't let that happen. You can't let a team get out ahead because, for the most part, in their 3 wins for the Colonials at home, they've had to fight from behind, and you don't want that to happen, especially against a solid, impressive team like Kennesaw State, who's number 8 in the polls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're definitely going to have to keep it close and, like we stated earlier, just be able to have that balance, not only get Elijah Jackson going, but also, have the ability to air the ball out with George Martin because the Colonials have been able to find a lot of success these past couple of weeks.
Yeah, 3 games remaining. Kennesaw State. Then next week they're on the road to Monmouth in New Jersey. We're going to be sending a crew out there for Colonial Sports Network. Excited for that coverage. And then they finish off November 20th at home against Campbell. So, 3 big weeks left for the Colonials and Bernard Clark. If they can make a run, to challenge Kennesaw State and Monmouth for the top of the Big South Conference. So for more content regarding Army football, be sure to stay tuned to colonialsportsnetwork.com. And, a lot of coverage coming up this weekend as Kennesaw State, the number 8 team in the FCS, visits the Joe. For Ethan Morrison, I've been Nathan Breisinger, and this was the Bobby Moe Football Show.